So from this information, which is great. So for people listening to this, either on the podcast or listening back, as we're listening, we're getting very similar feedback from everyone. So one of the things that really jumped out at me is this feeling of being threatened.
Yeah.
So it's a protection. If I feel threatened or she feels threatened, or it doesn't matter who feels threatened, boom, they shut down. And the easiest way to protect ourselves from getting our buttons pushed is to not be able to hear what's coming in. So if I shut down, if I'm tired of getting my buttons pushed, then this little invisible wall comes up and I just stop listening. Okay. So what's happening here is years and years of coping in a marriage where both of you have developed different coping skills, or quite possibly the same ones, right? For when you feel threatened or attacked by the other. Okay. One will either shut down, or like Shauna, for example, the real fighting begins and the loudest one wins. So it's one of two defense mechanisms. One is, this is how I was raised. When you feel threatened, you fight back. Or when you feel threatened, you shut down. Either way, it's a defense mechanism and it disconnects you from the other person. So if you're trying to reconnect and reestablish a relationship with your spouse, this is the first thing that has to be addressed. So when she says, let's see, I'm listening to her tone rather than what she says. So what's happening here is you're waiting to be triggered, and as soon as you are, you shut down. Instead of like, okay, she wants to express herself to me. This is uncomfortable, but you know what? I am going to try and hear her. I'm going to try and decipher the message coming through this very sort of tonal dialogue. It's triggering me, but I know she's trying to communicate with me, so I'm going to do my best. Now, the other way that you can communicate with her is by saying, hey, listen, sometimes it feels like you're being condescending and you're talking down to me. And when that happens, I tend to shut down. Right. And that can also open up a brand new conversation, because that's the other thing that Shauna mentioned, that this was happening for years until she had a conversation with her husband. And they both were seeking to understand the other. So ultimately, once you recognize that this is your defense mechanism, then this is where you can come from as far as communicating this small little piece to your wife. How does that land for you, Ted?
Well, I think it lands in an area where, like, when I first mentioned something on this podcast or whatever it's going to be, I said that things weren't as straightforward as I thought they were going to be. Just this change in how I deal with conversations with my wife is really something to think about. It's going to, you don't just kind of act. I don't just kind of act on it. I have to change what it is that I feel about a situation. Now, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. When I'm saying I'm trying to find my feet, I'm trying to go on a quest to change my life. These are things that I'm going to have to look at, and they're not easy. They're not easy. They're hard on me, frankly, emotionally. It's probably the best thing for me to do, to talk to her about it, but there's always a but, I feel that I'm always the bad guy. I'm always the one that's wrong. I'm always the one that doesn't understand, and for all I know, that may be true. I don't know. But it's difficult for me to talk seriously to someone who feels that I'm always the problem. Um, I I can only anticipate what she might say if I were to tell her how I felt, and I may be totally wrong about that, but I think it's something that I have to do, just like I have to, get things together with my job and my kid, but these are not easy things to do. And I just never realized how difficult it would actually be to change. I think people can change. I think I can change. It just ain't going to be easy.